そういえばマオマオって人種様触り気の使いでね。
Hi there, everyone. Scott and Lars back for another review and analysis for the Apothecary Diaries, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And in this week's episode, we got the most wholesome hot bath spa scene that we've ever had in anime.
This was... Honestly, we need more like it, where the focus isn't the fan service. It's the characters. It's learning about them, learning about the world that they're living in. And it just happens to be in a bathtub, like a really relaxed place, a place that's supposed to be a relaxed and safe place.
Yeah, this was a really good episode. Again, another setup episode, but it was just a really nice, chill episode with the girls doing girl things. And it's amazing how much was packed into this episode, which we should start getting to. But first, we are still handing out frogs done by Camille to anyone who finds the correct number of frogs in these videos. Please make sure that you are the first person to comment with the correct number of frogs, and you will have won your own frog from Camille. And now that we know what the joke is, you can think of it as your own personal way of reaching out to Jinji.
This just got weird. I love it.
All right, so let's hit on the events of this episode. It opens up rather ominously with eunuchs being arrayed into rows and columns, and then one shambles forward as if he's been in a fight, and then cut to the girls. We've got Xiaolan, who is begging Mao Mao for references to get a job once she leaves the rear palace. It's amazing how the time flies. Nearly 2 years have gone by. Her contract will be up, and she will be kicked on out. Now, while she has been going to the school in the rear palace and has been learning how to read and to write and other skills, it's time to put those skills to use, and she doesn't have any connections, which is why she needs a friend like Mao Mao. But the only people that Mao Mao can recommend her to are in the red light district. And Mao Mao is a good enough friend to be like, yeah, my recommendations are a last resort, if anything. So they go and they talk to Shisui, who is like, hey, why don't we then go to the bathhouse? And she's like, I will show you why this is so important, why it's such a big deal for you to come on over here more often than you already do. And we get a ton of great character building in those scenes at the bathhouse, with how carefree Shisui is, where she jumps into the hot water and gets a little bit scalded. We get to see how Xiaolin is afraid of getting into the water, not because it's like, oh, it's going to burn me, or because she can't swim, but it's not a part of her upbringing. Instead, she wipes down with a cloth. And then Mao Mao is being Mao Mao. And there's all of these great conversations and little bits of their dynamic coming through. Great friendship stuff. But finally, Shusui's like, okay, we're going to go and we're going to give massages to the lower ranking concubines. The high ranking concubines, the four mistresses of the emperor, they all have their own private bathhouses. But all the other concubines are there for the taking. If you go and can ingratiate yourself to them by providing good services, a la massage, or in Mao Mao's case, we're going to take some hair from you, get you nice and smooth. They will reward you. They will give you some gifts, even if they're broken down, they're still of great quality that Shisui says you can sell later on. But even better, you might get taken on as a servant, either as they hopefully climb the social ladder within the rear palace, or they will give you a recommendation to serve their family once your contract is up. So Xiaolan now has the opportunity to serve these concubines, get up close and personal, and start making very important connections. And this is all really great. The problem is is that Mao Mao being so closely tied to Lady Gyokyo, it would be seen as absolutely improper, slanderous, treasonous even, for her to be spending so much time with lesser concubines. However, Lady Gyokyo is like, yeah, sure, we're going to let that happen. Why? Because I need the gossip. When the girls are all together and they're all getting massages and getting the hair trimmed or plucked, and they're all feeling really good, lips are going to start wagging, same with the tongues, and the next thing you know, all kinds of very important information starts coming out. And it becomes very clear that all of the efforts to prevent the rear palace from realizing that two of the main concubines are pregnant, they already know. The women know. Your suspect pool, Mao Mao, for who the killer is, has just exploded exponentially. Because it's like, congratulations, everyone knows. But that's still important information to have. But this causes some issues within the Jade Palace, where the other girls, the new girls, are all like, this still does not seem very proper. We don't like it. But Mao Mao offers to bring along the youngest sister to join her, make some connections, keep an eye on her, and also serve as one of Lady Gyokyo's spies. And that leads to them meeting up with Lady Li Shu, who's been going to the bathhouse rather than to the one that she has in her own palace. And we find out that there is a ghost haunting her halls. This poor girl just cannot catch a break. So Detective Mao Mao will be back on the case next episode.
Very well put. First thing I really want to touch on is this is a perfect way, in my opinion, and I'm sure other people will have their own opinions, but in my opinion, this is a perfect way to subvert the male gaze when it comes to writing. Specifically, this episode, it was a scene that in any other anime would have been played up for the fan service.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the focus here. That's not what this story's about. This story is focused on the characters, on their worries, on their drama, on the reality of the life they're living now, and not about the fact that they're taking a bath, which is a breath of fresh air.
It absolutely is. Because this gives us a chance to see them truly as characters, as individuals, rather than as slabs of meat. Now, don't get me wrong. I like an attractive woman as much as the next guy, maybe even more so. But showing respect to your characters is very important. And not having these women go about all naked like they might have done, but rather keeping them modest, and the conversations that they have on each other's physique to a minimum, they have it, but it's very small, and it comes from Mao Mao because she's quirky that way from being in the red light district. It allows us to have far more time to talk about skills, knowledge, connections, personality. Rather than focusing on boob size, we get a really cute scene with shampoo.
Mm-hmm.
That was nice.
Well, pay attention to that, because you think it's a one-off comment, but it actually connects into something later. Something I can't reveal at this time, but just that little boob comment that Mao Mao makes, it'll make sense later.
Oh my.
Well, I can't reveal any more, but it's
Lars stumbling upon things.
It's something along the lines of a line that has been stated before, something about the Emperor's preferences.
Yeah.
It's connected to that. Anyway, let's continue.
One of the things that I really do like about this episode, and that I would love to see more of in fiction, is the strong friendship between girls.
Yes.
This, there are writers out there who are capable and willing to write good friendships between girls, but let's be honest, there's so much fiction that's geared towards teenagers, and the Apothecary Diaries is meant to touch on a teenage demographic. Let's be honest. There are so many stories that are geared towards teenage girls that do not depict girl friendships in a very positive light. There's not enough of them. And this is a great example of showing that. And
Yes.
you can tell, I'm like, take the whole Bechdel test and toss out the window. Kind of a thing, because it's like, yes, sure, it's a fun joke that makes you wonder, wait a second, are they talking about things other than dudes? This episode is a great example of there's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about in the lives of these women, and that it can be just about anything, and that they can have naturally flowing conversations. Let's see more of that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a mix of different things. Like, they go from like talking about how to survive after the Rear Palace. They talk about like their worries and their concerns. They talk about like the opportunity they have now, and then like different rumors going around the palace. And yeah, some of them are about a new eunuch coming in, but not all of them. In fact, most of them aren't.
Yeah, coming back to like the conversations about, so who's pregnant, and can we guess what the gender of the baby's going to be,
Right.
And then other things that again that they talk about are beauty techniques. It's like, well,
Yeah.
I can pluck the hairs off. I can pluck the hairs off of your legs. Are you willing to go for that? And it's just trying to see who does and who doesn't. And so it's just that's more depth than what I see so many other writers do, because they're like, okay, if I can't have the girls talk about guys, they're going to talk about this one subject. This one subject. That's all they will talk about, because that's the one thing I know.
How is that a real conversation? Just ever? Like, every conversation I've ever had with anybody, the conversation flows. Different like tangents will pop up, and the conversation will change as you go, especially if it's a longer conversation you have with somebody.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, the longer conversation goes, the more it evolves. And again, we get that in this episode.
Yeah, we do. This episode was really well done. I love the amount of foreshadowing that's in this episode, because just because I've read ahead and know about things that are coming up in the future. There's a lot to pay attention to in this episode. So if you're not paying attention, like, you might miss some of the like more subtle lead-ins to the stuff that's about to happen in the next 2 or 3 episodes.
We were talking about this earlier, if we wanted to discuss and analyze the opening to the second half of the season, and we kind of decided no, just because there's a whole lot that's happening in the opening that even as someone like myself who hasn't read ahead, just paying attention, I'm like, oh, the hand just got tipped a little bit. The show's like, stay tuned. Things are about to get wild.
Oh,
and this episode, yeah, yeah. And this episode, I think, is kind of like that breath of fresh air to be like, take your deep breath, because things are going to get wild.
Well, it's I love how this series actually, because it's a calm before the storm, but it doesn't feel that way. It's just another day in the life, and I'm all right with that. Every day doesn't have to be filled with drama and like life-threatening scenarios. Every day we don't have to worry about the frog, though Mau Mau still does.
Yeah, Mau Mau's worrying about that frog, which, to quickly hop onto that. It's nice having an episode that doesn't have Shinji in it beyond references. And I say that as someone who really likes Shinji's character, but it's essential to step back from the big stuff of like, oh, the Emperor's younger brother, and the way larger machinations and schemes that are coursing throughout the palace and throughout the country as a whole, it's nice to come back down and remind ourselves that in terms of this fictional world, these are real people with real lives, real concerns that are not all constantly subsumed by whatever the big gossip is amongst royal powers. And you know what? And maybe that's some good advice also for real world habits.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it very much points out that even this, even in the Rear Palace, which is basically a system based around one guy, and basically, in a lot of cases, feels like the most chauvinistic place you could imagine. It's really not, because it's the Emperor's a guest there almost. He doesn't, like, even though they kind of say he lives there, like, his day-to-day life, he's outside of that. And it's really about ladies inside the Rear Palace and their lives with and without the Emperor. And so, like, we're more interested in that because that's the characters we're getting to know. We've only seen the Emperor on the screen handful of times, really. But we've seen Lady Gyokyo a whole ton. We've seen almost all of the other like major consorts more than we have the Emperor. Actually, no. Correction. All of them we've seen more than the Emperor. There's not a single one we haven't seen more than him.
Yeah. I mean, even with what little we do know of Lady Lishu, yeah, she has technically had more screen time than the Emperor has.
Exactly. And so in this case, even though he holds a lot of power, he's still a minor character to what's going on at the moment. And I think as a writer, that's fine. You can have the major characters play a more minor role. And sometimes that's better. Like, sometimes the story's less interesting when you're looking at it from the top down, when you're looking at it from, like, the emperor or the king of a country. And it's more interesting in the seat of, like, the general or a common soldier. In this case, we're seeing exactly what that's like. I mean, we've got connections back to the top in multiple different ways, but we're seeing the day-to-day. We're actually getting proper world building because it's not focused on, like, the tippy top of the pyramid.
And actually, to build on that a little bit, when I first began writing Bleed, Steam, and Steel, it was meant to be a book originally told from Lord Baldwin's perspective. And and as the book right now stands, he's almost never in it. Because I was like, what would it be like if I also saw his story through the eyes of someone who really admired him, which became Asuka. And then that just spun out all this other stuff. I'm like, it's actually way more interesting to look at Asuka and Zemon and General Wesley and so forth than talking about Lord Baldwin. Okay. And then actually in the way it kind of enhances Lord Baldwin, he's like, oh, he's this enigma. So cool.
Well, and I think another thing that can be said about it is, I mean, you can have stories where the main character isn't the viewpoint character. I mean, I know this is a little bit of tangent for what's going on, but, like, it's all right to have it. Well, I think the biggest one that comes to my mind is the, like, melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. The main character is Haruhi Suzumiya, but we're not seeing it straight through her eyes. We're seeing it from Kyone's eyes, the male lead's eyes. So he's our viewpoint character, but, like, the main character, everything's focused on is Haruhi. And kind of like on a tangent here, Mao Mao is our main character, and it's mostly her life that we're seeing, but she holds very little power. So we're getting to see a bunch of other stuff to contextualize everything that's happening around Mao Mao. And even if Mao Mao doesn't want to be dragged into the drama that's going around her, she is going to be dragged into the drama around her because she already has.
And we get that reiterated again to us at the beginning of this episode with the whole "I gotta wash off the slime of that frog." She's stuck She knows the truth. She's trying to convince herself otherwise. It's too late. Mao Mao is now in the game. And I'm interested in seeing who she becomes when she finally accepts that.
Yeah.
Because in a way, that's kind of a character flaw for Mao Mao, that she does not want to accept certain truths and certain information because of how uncomfortable it would be just knowing it, and also what kind of responsibility that might lay on her shoulders by acknowledging that, which so far she has more than a season of distancing herself many times from the truth. And now she's in a situation where she really can't.
This was a good episode. I'm so excited for what it's setting up, because y'all are gonna have your minds blown. There's stuff like, let's just say some of the characters you're seeing on screen are holding some massive secrets.
I like secrets.
Oh, once those secrets get blown, just everything changes. Oh man, it's so much fun.
Oh man, I am excited. I'm excited to move forward. Just as like a kind of just briefly touching on some stuff from the opening, I did not expect to see Lacan again. And just briefly seeing them, like, so he's coming back. This is going to be interesting. I just thought it was a funny joke at first, where the Emperor was all like, "Yeah, I wouldn't want to get on Lacan's bad side." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." Apparently, he's a big deal, and it's like, oh, if he's coming back, I guess he is a big deal. Okay, okay.
You don't mess with Lacan, and like, we're gonna see why you don't mess with Lacan coming up, and I love it.
All right, so that will do it for our review and analysis of this particular episode. We want to hear what your thoughts were about the events in this episode, especially regarding how, for instance, like how the girls are portrayed in the bathhouse. Since, as Scott said, like, this is a neat subversion of the male gaze, and because it's such a hot button topic, we'd love to hear from the rest of you what your thoughts are on that. And please remember, comment with the correct number of frogs. Be the first person to do so, and you will win yourself a frog. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing. If you'd like to support the work that we do, please make sure that you're subscribed if you haven't already done so, and check out the books that we've published. Links for them are in the description below. And until the next time that we meet each other in the bathhouse, tschüss.
Okini.